I'm headed for a land that's far away, beside the crystal fountain. So come with me, we'll go and see the big rock candy mountains.
And we are back. This is the great classic rock debate. My name is Kenny.
And as usual, I have zero qualifications.
That's my guy. And what we do is we talk classic rock, anything and everything. We try not to ever be limited by inside a box, and all topics related to classic rock are open. Before we get too far into anything, let me just throw out a quick reminder, and that is if you happen to be watching this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Like, comment, and subscribe. That's how we build the channel. Also, a quick shout out to two of my favorite YouTube channels, A Professor of Rock and Rick Beato. They make great videos. Please watch them. Really interesting, powerful stuff. Now, today is Thanksgiving Day, which is not a typical day for us to do our show, but we're able to fit it in, and we thought it might be kind of fun to do like a curveball, do something a little bit different. Typically, we talk about a particular artist, a particular genre, a particular album, a particular era, something like that, and sort of expand on that. You mentioned the other day, you said, you know, it would be fun. Let's talk about Elvis. And I know that Elvis is certainly not what you would consider to be a classic rock artist. However, I think it is fair to say that Elvis, along with Little Richard, Chuck Berry, Buddy Holly, and some others, they laid the foundation for all of rock, and especially what was going to eventually become classic rock. And because we are sort of now on the heels of this movie that was released a few months ago called Elvis, I thought this might be kind of a timely thing. So when you pitched it, I said, that's a great idea. So before I say too much about Elvis, tell me what's on your mind about Elvis, and we're going to just sort of go from there.
Well, the movie is tremendous. Austin Butler, just maybe he'll win the Academy Award. I don't know. I hope he does. For
he should get a nomination, no question.
Yeah, I haven't seen too many other. I'm trying to think of what else. Anyway, we'll talk about movies another time. But yeah, the thing what Elvis did at the top of the list. I mean, he was able to take this music that a lot of people created,
R&B. Yeah. Let me throw this in real quick. So it was rhythm and blues, which was sort of code language for black music.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a DJ named Alan Freed. He's pretty well known. Yes. And he was sort of a visionary. He was kind of ahead of his time. And he was playing a lot of R&B records when it wasn't so acceptable for a white DJ. But because the term rhythm and blues suggested, oh, they're black artists, he decided to rename it rock and roll. Okay. And I'm only pointing that out because nowadays the term rock and roll, or just rock, it's sort of come to identify a white genre of music. And then we still call a black music rhythm and blues or soul or whatever. But back at that time, the two terms rhythm and blues and rock and roll were interchangeable. And that was sort of the reason he coined it in the first place. So all right, anyway, go ahead from there.
Oh, no. So the guy had a good ear for hearing Elvis, and a lot of Americans probably know this, but younger folks may not. You know who else had a good ear for what Elvis was listening to was Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, Eric Clapton, all these guys in Britain.
Right.
Were like so far removed. They didn't have to worry, or they weren't worrying about this racial thing.
They didn't care what race the artist was. They just
whatever this is, it sounds cool.
Right.
No one else is doing it, and he's playing an electric guitar, and he's playing are these guitars that these white band. I didn't even know. I couldn't even tell you. You know, you're gonna laugh now. Is it Glenn Miller was the equivalent of a white band before rock and roll became anything? You know what I'm saying? Like they had. Yeah, like Jerry Lee Lewis and people like that, but there was no such thing as a white R&B band. If I do, correct me, and I could be wrong. But in England, so when the music started coming out, like these English guys, like with this guy Alan Freed, and Elvis, all knew that It's the future. That is what we want to play.
That's my use of the word visionary. Right.
Yeah. So Elvis made it cool. Like, this white guy is playing the song these black people are playing. And some people said, well, that makes him cool. But some other people said, hey, this music is good.
Right.
Right. And it's all be coming out of the
right.
So amazing about these black musicians, they're all self-taught.
Right. Yeah.
And matter of fact, people now try to learn to play the blues. And you can't go to college to learn that. You can't go to classical school at Berkeley.
Yeah, you pretty much had to hear it. You have to have an ear for it because it was off notes as opposed to being on notes, right?
Yeah, it was a great movie about that transition. It's called Crossroads. It was with Ralph Macchio.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, where the guy, like Ralph Macchio, is trying to be this straight-laced white guy.
Right.
A black guy, like the blues guy, is like trying to get him into trouble. And he goes,
right.
All this music. Why? We're getting all these things we probably shouldn't have been doing, and drinking and driving fast and women and all that stuff. That's what created the blues.
Right.
And so
yeah, it's funny you mentioned that movie because it's not a great movie, but from the perspective of its role in identifying certain elements of history, it's valuable. So it's
very
still a
valuable.
movie worth seeing, even though it's in some ways schlocky. But
yeah, well, in the other movie, 30 seconds. If you ever get a chance, see the movie called Fist, F-I-S-T.
Sylvester Stallone.
Truck, yeah.
Okay.
It's a great movie, and it's a fictionalized, but good enough about how the mob got in with labor.
Right. Yeah, I remember it. Yeah.
It was like, hold it. The people at these factories are kicking the shit out of us with these goon squads. Like, oh, well, we're going to go get a better goon squad called the Mafia. And all on is access to our pension funds.
Right.
All right, so let's go back to Elvis.
Okay, so now back to Elvis. Go ahead.
Okay,
go ahead. Let me say this, because what I want to do, at least to begin, is I'm going to start. I'm going to date myself, of course, but I want to talk about Elvis and sort of in the progression of my early life, my childhood, and even my teen years, how I sort of saw Elvis through the eyes of a kid that was my age, because I started listening to pop music around the age of 11 or 12. That's when my buddies were starting to say, did you hear that song by such and such? And at this point in time, Elvis's career was largely over, okay? When I was about 12 is when he had that song, Burning Love, which I'll admit to this day, I still think is a good song and I still like it. But that was pretty much the end of his hit-making career. So for that reason, I always sort of identified Elvis with, it's my parents' music, okay? And you know that when you're a kid, or especially when you're a teenager, your parents' music is like kryptonite. It's not something that you embrace.
I'm that right now.
Right. I can imagine.
Daughters.
It's not something that you embrace and say, oh, my parents like this, I like it too. No, it's like, that's my parents' music. You couldn't pay me to listen to that. So I remember my dad was a fan of Elvis, and he would listen to Elvis records. I even remember him taking us to a few of those Elvis movies, which I don't remember the movies that well. And I know that they were kind of low budget. They always made money. But that's how I identified Elvis. And I remember that song, In the Ghetto. My dad played that one a lot. He really liked that song. Okay. So anyway, for me, he was not an artist I ever identified with or connected with or anything like that. And at the time he passed in 1977, the entire world was turned upside down by that. I was like 16, and I just kind of shrugged it off like, okay, some dude who made music a million years before I was born, who my mom and dad liked, passed away. I don't really feel one way or the other, and I certainly don't feel grief or anything like that. So for me, it was a non-event. And it wasn't until years after the fact. Don't get me wrong. I knew who he was, and I knew they called him the king of rock and roll and all that kind of stuff. I don't think I had anything against him. I just didn't ever hear Elvis songs that made me say, wow, I think I like this guy, okay? So then I'm fast forwarding now to my mid-30s. By this point in time, I've become this enormous music fan, music collector. And, I often describe myself as a walking encyclopedia of music trivia. Anybody watching? Okay, that's intentional exaggeration. I'm not that smart, but
Intentional exaggeration.
right. But I'm in my mid-30s, and I'm saying to myself, I really don't know that much about Elvis. And I was in the stores one day, and they had a whole bunch of, I guess it was Elvis CDs, Elvis albums that had never yet been released on CD. And they had just put them on CD, and they had them right there on a special display at the front of the store. I had a few extra dollars in my pocket. I said, all right, you know what? Let me go retro, old school 50s, whatever you want to call it, and see if I can get in touch with a little bit of this Elvis music. And I took it home and I started to play. And this is the point where it really became interesting to me, because I had heard all about how, as a teenager, oh, and by the way, you'll see this in the movie if anybody's watching and you see the movie Elvis, I highly recommend it. He's a teenager, and the guy can sing, and he's learned how to play guitar and all these things, but he's young and he doesn't really know what direction he wants to take his career. And the fact that he's a white kid from Mississippi, but he's really embracing R&B, he was kind of advised not to do that. Like, okay, this is going to be a bad career choice, right? But he was rebellious by nature. He didn't really like being told what to do. He wanted to do what his heart told him. And even though in the movie they don't make a big deal out of him meeting Sam Phillips, who owned a recording studio in Memphis, who was also a visionary, that was a life-changing or perhaps even culture-changing event, because Sam Phillips, in his record studio, he welcomed everybody. He didn't care if you were white or black or whatever. If you make good music, come in here to my studio and record. And not to go too far off topic, but in the Johnny Cash movie, there's a wonderful scene where Johnny Cash goes into Sun Records. Sun Records was the name of the studio, where he goes in and meets Sam Phillips, and Sam Phillips allows him to do a quick audition, and he stops him and says, listen, son, I've heard what you're doing. I've heard it a million times. So in case you don't have anything different, we don't have to go through this. And that's when Johnny Cash played something different, and the story takes a turn. Yeah. So anyway, it was at this point where I start to realize, or I start to grasp, I suppose, Elvis really was something big. I'm 35 or 36, and for the first time, I'm starting to understand what made this guy so different. So for me, that was sort of a I don't want to say life-changing. It was one of those moments in which I completely changed my attitude toward him and my understanding of him. And going forward from there, I would always say, yeah, no, I like Elvis. I'm an Elvis fan. I never said that before, but I said it. Anyway, go ahead.
No, I totally agree. It's hard to, I'll give an example of, I'm going to go off tangent for or on tangent for 30. There's a movie in 19 called The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
Yes,
it's
heard of it.
Horror movie ever made. Of course.
Let me say this real quick. Every time I've ever done any kind of a Google search on best horror movies of all time, that one comes up every time, without exception.
And it's creepy. Like, but what happens right now, you say, okay, I can see this is gonna be scary, but if you watched it at your house at nighttime, right? I watched it at the daytime, and then I watched it again one night at a horror festival thing. Like, I can see how this is scary, but what you have to do, same with Elvis, you have to take yourself back to 1953 or
that's it.
1925 and say,
right.
Okay, might be scared now. We see The Exorcist, we see people get blown apart and people eating people, Dawn of the Dead, all that crap. But back then there weren't none of that.
Right.
And before Elvis, it was the time before Elvis and the time after Elvis.
Right.
And if there wasn't Elvis,
yeah,
like I said, I can't even tell you who they are. I couldn't
Pat Boone or whatever. Yeah, I mean,
but Glenn Miller.
Correct.
Pat trying to mimic
Little Richard. Yeah.
Yeah. So Elvis, like, there's that you have to like unlearn all these things, like Yoda says, to go back to really appreciate.
Right.
He was taking like his physical safety. Like, people wanted to kill him. A lot of white people said, he's playing black music, we want to kill him, and all this kind of thing.
Right.
So he was taking a big risk. I mean, it wasn't just like, now when people complain about the government, they're like, oh yeah, okay. Back in the 60s, you complained about the government and you ended up dead, right? Like,
right.
Under certain political organizations. So anyway, go ahead.
Okay, well, so I wanted to sort of, just for the purpose of moving forward the discussion, I wanted to sort of give my, how the image of Elvis changed for me as the years passed. And nowadays, I consider myself a big fan, but I know a lot more about him and about his history. And the part that really got me was the rebellious part, where they were different influencers, I'll say, were really trying to steer him into being like a bluegrass singer or a country singer or whatever. And that very first, it's not even an album. It was a bunch of recording sessions that were eventually sort of thrown together and turned into an album, but there was never any intent. And it's just called the Sun Record Sessions, and he recorded about 20 or 25 songs like that. And they were all standards. They were bluegrass standards. They were country standards. They were R&B standards. He was a 17-year-old kid. He went in and recorded these songs, and you could tell by his voice, this guy's a great singer, but it was the way he delivered the R&B songs, which is what caught Sam Phillips's ear, where he said, Sam Phillips had already determined R&B is going to be the future, but it's going to take a white guy to breach that boundary and bring it to the masses, and once that happens, the floodgates are open. So when he heard him sing, he's like, this is the guy. So that's kind of how it happened. So we both seen the movie now, right? Okay, so now I would like to go ahead and spend a few minutes on that. I really liked it. In fact, I've seen it twice now. I really, really liked it. The director is a guy named, is it Baz or Boz?
Luhrmann. Baz Luhrmann. He's Australian.
He's Australian.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I was assuming by that name.
All about that guy.
German
Keep going. He's awesome.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Well, I know he's directed quite a few movies, and if I state this not accurately, please fix it for me. But my understanding, and from what I've seen, is he's sort of what you would describe as a guy with a little bit of a flamboyant style.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I thought I was accurate, but you can probably say it better than me. So I really enjoyed the movie, and for me, the style of the director, it worked. Okay, the movie got really good reviews, but I always read the negatives because I find that they oftentimes are more substantive and will tell you more, at least factually, what you're going to either like or dislike about the movie. The positives tend to be one-liners that say this movie's really great, and then that's it. So the negative reviews, they were fairly heavy-handed with the criticism of the director, Baz Luhrmann, okay? Now, for me, that was not an issue. I really enjoyed the movie. Plus, and I think this is probably the most important takeaway from the movie, and that is, I think this was the very first movie that really put Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, sort of under a microscope and really, let's just say, spilled sunlight on this guy, his behavior, his scams. He was a terrible human being, and he really took advantage of Elvis. Elvis trusted him, which he shouldn't have, and this guy really took advantage of him. And it's a shame because it affected his career, it affected him personally, probably affected his lifespan. And by the time the movie ends, I don't know about you, but I could only walk out with such a feeling of sadness for Elvis and how he was exploited, I guess we'll say.
Tragically flawed, but you have to remember, oh God, this is again, we're talking about unlearning. When Tom Parker was doing all this stuff, of course he's exploiting Elvis, but Elvis is making a ton of money. Okay,
right. He was.
But this was what's called uncharted ground. There was nothing on earth like this where Elvis. I mean, they have a catchphrase: Elvis has left the building. Tell people to stop coming on stage and stop acting stupid. He's gone.
Right.
Wait,
is that how it started?
Yes.
Now,
so
I've been hearing that forever, and I don't even really know the meaning of it.
Like idiots. Don't try to. He's left the building. Like, just relax.
Wow.
Go back to your normal life. And so there were no ground rules today. Now, in The Other Man, we're going to briefly talk about this, and then there's a connection between this other man and Elvis. The other man is called Peter Grant. He was the manager of the driving force of Led Zeppelin. Okay.
Okay. All right.
What Elvis started, Peter Grant went to the next level, because if you'd go to New Mexico or Austin, Texas, or wherever, some local guy there, here's what's going to happen, boy. We're going to give you $5,000 for this show. You're going to take it. You're going to shut your damn mouth, right?
Okay.
But someone like, no, you give us $100,000 or we don't come. And then
So he was an early manager of Led Zeppelin.
He was the manager. Like, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. All right. I wasn't sure.
So
I don't recognize the name.
He was a professional wrestler. He was like 6'8" and 400 pounds.
Okay. Okay.
And so he took what Tom Parker did. Remember, Tom Parker just say, "Oh, Elvis not going to come there." Okay.
Right.
And Elvis got the gravitas, but then Peter Grant, and then later on in life, when Led Zeppelin was in New York City, they met Elvis.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was really cool
That's
story.
Interesting.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, you'll see, if there's a recording on YouTube, you can see where Elvis is playing. Oh, y'all play real good now. We got Led Zeppelin on here. So we're going to play good for him. So
Wow.
Press Led Zeppelin, right?
Wow. I didn't know.
So popular. Yeah. So Tom Parker was exploiting Elvis, but at the same time, like wondering what could he get away with? And when you see the scene at the what's it called now? I don't know. I think it's called the Hilton now, but whatever it was called back then.
The International or something like that.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
He was like, okay, give me, Elvis, $3 million. The guy's like, okay.
Right.
And then he says, what about me? You got to pay me now. He goes, unlimited casino.
Right.
And that had never been done before.
Right.
So, and no one had the intelligence or to say, hey, you're exploiting him. Right. And then Elvis was probably insecure. Okay. Deep on the inside, because he trusted this guy.
Right.
He knew nothing about money. He knew nothing. And Tom Parker knew 20% more than Elvis did, which is 20% of nothing.
Right.
Right. He said in the movie, he said he probably took $100 million, $200 million away from Elvis Presley.
Oh yeah.
And
I didn't even know, but eventually there were lawsuits. I guess Elvis's estate sued him and won. So I don't know how much was collected or whatever, but it's significant that they were able to win because he just absolutely took advantage of them.
Yeah, and he, and you think about this. Who else was in Vegas? Who was the other richest man in the world who was in Vegas when all this was going down? Who was breaking on Howard Hughes? Okay.
Oh, okay.
So there are all these people in Vegas doing with the mob there, right?
Right.
Putting money here, doing this, and get away with murder, no pun intended. They're in Vegas, right? So Tom Parker, he was in his element.
Right. Oh yeah.
He was a criminal amongst these other criminals. But on Tom Parker's side is like, he didn't put a gun to Elvis's head. I'm not trying to.
True.
So anyway, go ahead.
Okay. So just as a general comment, if I haven't made it clear, I thought this movie was excellent. And if for anybody watching, if you haven't seen it, I can't recommend it highly enough. It's just really good. And there's been lots of Elvis movies over the years, and there's been lots of good Elvis movies over the years. But this one tells a side of the story that you've never heard. And listen, that kid who played Elvis, Austin Butler. Has he been in anything else?
Yeah, he played the character Tex in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. One of the murder.
I didn't see it.
Family. You know what? I finally watched it one night because I was bored. It's a pretty good movie, and you'll like it because it tells an alternate version of what happened with the Mansons.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's really good. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I was going to say I wasn't really sure who he was. This is the first movie I've ever seen him in which at least I do remember him. So if I saw him before, I don't remember.
No,
this performance was unspeakably awesome. I mean, I really hope he gets an Oscar nomination because he absolutely deserves it. I think
Tom Hanks,
I think the movie is good, and if it doesn't get a nomination, so be it. But yeah, and Tom Hanks too.
Best supporting actors, just mail it in my opinion.
Yeah. So I really hope that's the net result of this.
Yeah, the thing about Baz Luhrmann, like you and I, Kenny and I went to see Moulin Rouge. Took us 3 times to see it. The first 2 times the projector broke and something else happened.
Projector broke, and then the volume went out.
Yeah. Okay. So
Right.
we're like, we're not supposed to see this movie.
Yeah, we're not supposed to see it.
Baz Luhrmann directed that movie. Highly
Correct.
stylized movie. I worship that movie.
Oh, okay.
And his first movie that I know of is called Strictly Ballroom.
Heard of it.
It's about ballroom dancing. It is tremendous.
Really?
Yes, you will.
Okay.
Especially you and your wife will watch it together, and you're like,
Okay.
"Whoa!" Now it's really good.
Okay, because if somebody came up to me and says you're gonna love this movie about ballroom dancing, I'd turn and run. But I trust you. So
the other movie about ballroom dancing, we're so far from Elvis, is the American piece of crap.
No, the Japanese, the
Shall
Richard
We
Gere
Dance?
movie. Yes, I saw that and I thought it was good.
In the theater, I was crying, and I got up and started clapping in the middle. I've only done that like maybe 2 other times in my life. That Japanese movie, I was screaming. I was so excited.
That was a good movie. Good movie.
Oh, excellent. All right, so back to Elvis.
Yeah.
I wish he hadn't been on so many drugs, because
Right.
I think musically he was ready to take on other things and try new things. Who knows? Maybe an album with Led Zeppelin. You know, can you imagine him and Robert Plant singing together, or writing some material? I don't know.
Well, had things not ended so tragically the way they did, the movie depicts how he sort of has this upswing. He starts performing in Vegas and he's selling out and everything's going well, up until it wasn't. But it's too bad. And all we can, we'll always be left to wonder why. But
he made it cool. Like the day he died, my dad was with some friends, and they're all like, I'm not gay or anything, but he's a good looking man, and he's man of the women, and they were all like just congratulatory towards him. Like they're like, yeah.
Right.
And it was like one of the few times you hear imagine our dad saying something like that about another.
Right.
That's strange.
Right.
Look a man, and so he broke these barriers and made it cool to be this black music, which was funny. I went to see a band called Wolf Mother in L.A., and the guy, these scalpers who were all black, and they were like talking to me. I go, I got an extra ticket. He didn't want to buy. I go, you want to go with me? He goes, I'll pass. Like it was below him. I said, dude, black people created rock and roll music.
Right.
Yeah. Understand, like, you guys created this music. What are you talking about? Like, you made it.
Yeah. You remember a few weeks back, you just sort of threw this out as a suggestion. You said something like, we should do a show one of these days on the best rock covers, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I always knew that Elvis had done quite a few covers, all right, and especially in the early days.
Hundreds,
yeah. And also, I mean, I don't want to be unfair, so I want to mention that copyright laws as they exist now, they didn't exist in the 50s. So anytime you heard a song on the radio that you liked, everybody would go out and record it. It wasn't, it wasn't limited.
No one had staked the rights to it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the recording companies, more than anybody, Motown was famous for this. They hired their own songwriters, and a songwriter would write a song that they thought was good, and every single artist in the stable would record it, and they would just see who's did the So anyway, but there's a website called Secondhand Songs. Man, if you've never been there, I can't recommend it enough. I'm pulling it up right now, and find Elvis on secondhandsongs.com, and he recorded over 500.
Yeah, I was guessing 250, but yeah.
500, and the diversity of the artist pool from which he covered is unthinkable. Everything from one end of the spectrum to the other. And I have to give whoever made those choices. I don't know if it was him or his management, whatever, but I give them a lot of credit, because Elvis had a certain intangible quality. And I like to describe it as he could take a song that might have sounded good, and he hits it with a bolt of lightning, and then it sounds amazing, okay? And so one day, a while back, I sat down with a list of covers, and not 500, but probably 15 or 20, and played over and over the original versus the Elvis. And look, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, so you can like whatever you like. but it's almost undeniable when you hear his version. You go, okay, I see why that one was the big hit, you know, because he just took it and did something magic with it. So,
how much time do we have left?
well, we just got the warning, so we probably should go ahead and wrap it up. And I don't want to do any classic rock nominations tonight. However, I do want to nominate favorite Elvis song. So if you want anything, you want to say anything first, go ahead. But then I want to get to that.
All right, no, this will be my recommendation for the night.
Before you do it, let me say something really quick.
Yes, sir.
Probably 40 years ago, you asked me one day, what's your favorite Elvis song? And I was looking for some sort of an object to hit you with, because I thought, why would he even ask me a question like that, you know? But, right. But when you told me what it was your favorite, I went, that's a good choice. I never crossed my mind. So I don't know if that's what you're going to say now, and I'm not going to give it away, but go ahead.
No, all right, are you talking about the song that was covered subsequently by Roland Gift and Fine Young Cannibals? That song?
I think it was. It was. Yes.
That's the okay. You could talk. All right. Here's my recommendation.
Okay.
Living Color's second album. I forgot the name of the album now. Shit. So Living Color's a great band. If you ever all black band, they are super tough. So they have a song on their second album called Elvis is Dead. And it's kind of a tribute / black comedy song.
Okay.
So Little Richard, they have Little Richard plays on the song with them. It's like, it's really cool song, and they're talking about it, and it's just like, even Living Colors, like they hard to believe that someone, a white person, can get people to like worship him, and it's even amazing to them. You can hear by the lyrics on this song. Their second album, I forgot what it's called now. Don't kill me, guys. But it's a really good album. But Elvis is Dead, and it's got a great sax solo in it.
And is it a remake of an Elvis song that they changed?
No. It's just
okay. All right. It's just a good song. Yeah. Okay. So here's what I'm. First of all, the song that you named 40 years ago was "Suspicious Minds." Okay. And as soon as you said it, I went, you know what? That is a great song. It really is. You know. So it would have never popped in my head, but as soon as you said it, I said, "That is undeniable. I like that song, and it's a great song." So. For anybody who wants to hear a good Elvis song, Suspicious Minds is a great choice.
Let me jump in for 20 seconds.
Go right ahead.
And again, we talked about this on our very first show, and what pisses me off limitlessly was the lack of quality digital recordings. Like, if you listen to that song loud, you can hear his range. We're caught in a trap. Especially, like, he's going everywhere to the range. And, like, if that was actually recorded properly, my God, it would sound like God himself was singing. So, that just pisses me off that all these guys, like these blues guys from the 20s and 30s, and like Howling Wolf, all these guys, you know. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay. So, before I name my song, real quick, there's a Canadian band from like the 80s or 90s or whatever who recorded an Elvis, something Cowboys. They got a girl lead singer, but it's the something Cowboys.
Not Toronto, is it?
They're from Canada. And it's the something.
It's not called, the band is not called Toronto, right?
No, it's something Cowboys. 2 words.
Oh, I don't know.
I can't think of it right now. They did a remake of the song Blue Moon, which is not an Elvis song, but it is a song Elvis recorded. And they do a really good, I'll have this group name next time. They did a really good version of it. I heard it on the radio years ago, and I said, my God, that's an Elvis song, but whoever's doing it, that's a good version. The song that I'm going to name as my recommendation for an Elvis song is called Marie's the Name of His Latest Flame. Have you heard that song before? Okay. I've got it right here on MP3, and I'm hoping this comes through, and if it doesn't...
Are we allowed to play this on the show?
Well, we use the intro and the outro, so I'm going to play just a few seconds. You tell me if you can hear this or not.
Okay.
Can you hear this?
Negative.
You cannot hear it. Okay. Well, then I'm going to go ahead and shut it off because I wasn't sure if that was going to come through or not. I probably have to go back and change the audio settings. The song is titled Marie's the Name of His Latest Flame. And he's singing about this, this beauty whose name is Marie, who he thinks he's in love with. Yet he's talking to his buddy, and his buddy's telling him about this hot chick he just met, and whose name is Marie. And he's realizing, wow, Marie just leaves a wake of devastation wherever she goes. But it's a 2-minute song. It's upbeat. It's early rock and roll, and it's catchy as can be. And I just love the song. I never get tired of it. So if you get a chance, play that one. Elvis Presley, Marie's the name of his latest flame. There you go. All right. Any further thoughts for tonight?
No, strictly ballroom.
Okay. Yeah. Put that on the hit list. Okay. So then we're going to wrap it up. For the last time, at least for tonight. If you're watching the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. We appreciate that. We build our channel. That's it for tonight, and we will catch you next time. Until then, my name is Kenny.
My name is Paul.
Yes, and we will see you later.
Latest.